Throughout history, we have seen people make powerful choices that have resulted in transformative change and powerful movements. Nelson Mandela, Greta Thunberg, Mary Robinson, Malala Yousafzai, and Rosa Parks.
I resisted the idea of being mistreated and pushed around because of my race.
We have seen people power, or social movements, grow from an individual idea, from a small group's determination to change something that they felt to be unjust, unfair, or discriminatory. To make that one small change, creating a better world. Power can be defined as having control, authority, or influence over others. This can have positive and negative results. Power can be abused and seen as evil, biased, or undeserved. Power can be seen as good, even-handed, positive, and transformative. It can be something inherited, gained, or given for exercising values that will help move and empower others for the good of people and planet. Power inequalities have been in existence throughout the history of humanity, and they are still very much present in today's world. Power is key to understanding the relationships and structures that have historically shaped who we are and how we live, creating new and exciting opportunities, but also potentially negatively exploiting people and planet in the name of global capitalism and progression. Power is available to young people and within young people. How well they understand it, recognise it, and use it may just determine the future of all life on this planet.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your Friday evening with us. My name is Maya Kelly. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a member of the NYCI Young People's Committee, and I'm emceeing tonight's event. This is my first time emceeing something like this, so bear with me. I'm just a tiny bit nervous. So the Youth 2030 committee, the Young People's Committee, is dedicated to advocating for equality and positive change. So far, we've launched the Youth for Climate Manifesto, taken part in the NESC conference on a just transition, and now we're here with all of you for One World Week. This committee is made up of youth activists of different ages, backgrounds, from all over Ireland. I myself, I'm from Cork. I'm tuning in from Cork, but I'm from the deepest, darkest depths of West Cork originally, in Golee. All of us have come together today to ensure the youth voice is heard and listened to. We're looking forward to having a really interactive and engaging event. And I really encourage you guys to get involved in the comment section. Let us know what you're thinking, how you're feeling, react to whatever we say. Maybe to get the ball rolling. Where is everyone tuning in from? Let me know where you're coming from. Yeah, tell us. And if you love a bit of social media, we also have a hashtag, which is One World Week, and use it to amplify the voices and stories you hear today. So tonight, as you might have guessed from the title of our event, we are discussing power, and we're exploring the concept of power, how we can challenge it to create meaningful change. As every person is unique, we all have different experiences, different lives, and so our concepts of power also differ. It isn't really a one size fits all concept. It 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 how we perceive our power depends on the intersecting aspects that make up who we are. We all experience different barriers to discovering our power, but also how we channel it and how we use it. So this is what we'll be exploring today. We have some amazing speakers here. And we really hope that through engaging with these activists from here in Ireland and people from abroad as well, that listening to their stories and hearing about their journeys, that you'll discover a new sense of the endless possibilities to your own power. Before we begin, I'd really love to know who you perceive or look at to be powerful. Is there someone you've seen on social media or read about, or is there someone in your own life? It can be a group of people, it can be anybody. I'd just really like to know who you see as powerful. I think from what I've seen so far in the events this week, everyone has different ideas of what power looks like, and that's reflected a lot in as to who we are as people and our experiences. That being said, though, we will be discussing some stories that might be quite heavy, and discussing our stories of challenging power or experiencing barriers to power can be really personal. So if it gets overwhelming at all, please be mindful towards yourselves throughout the event. Absolutely take a break if you need to. This is all being recorded and it'll be up on YouTube, so you'll be able to go back and catch up with what you missed. By all means, mind yourselves first. So yeah, I'm really glad to have everyone here today. And with that, I guess we'll move on to our first session, which is kind of exploring our own personal stories of power. As I said, we all have different experiences and different journeys. And I feel like when you have a very conscious thing of who you are and what you've done and what you've experienced. And I think sometimes listening to other people's experiences really opens your mind to the possibilities that what you yourself can achieve. So yeah, I would like to invite the other people who will be taking part in this discussion. So Alicia, do you want to join me?
If I can, I will.
Yeah, you've been given rights to join this.
Yay.
And then we will have Adam. Adam will be hosting and facilitating this panel. And then we'll have Callum. So I will hand over, I think Callum just might be a few minutes. Oh no, he's here, perfect. And I'll hand over to Adam and he will begin this session.
Thanks, Maya. So we want to start off the event today by giving you a little insight into our stories and how we find or are still finding and seizing our power. Who are members of NYCI's Youth 2030 Committee, and I'm going to get some of them to share their stories with you today. So I'll begin by telling you kind of my story, and then I'll invite Callum, Maya, and Alicia to tell us their stories and maybe some of the barriers that they faced. So to me, what does power mean to me? So to me, power is the ability to effect some sort of change, whether it be tangible change or just changing the minds and opinions of others. I still feel like I'm in the early stages of my journey, and I've started about maybe a year or two ago in kind of this youth activism sphere. So I kind of began my activism by just the general goal and vision of wanting to make change in my community or wanting to make change in my areas of interest, I suppose. And I didn't really think I had power at that point. I didn't feel like I had any influence or anything. And when I started out, I saw these established activists, role models that I'd seen, these larger than life figures, I suppose. And I didn't believe I could ever live up to these. And in some way that kind of discouraged me from committing to my role as an activist and continuing down this path that I did. So like when I thought of the word youth activist, or was picturing youth activists, I'd see people like Malala and Greta Thunberg, and I'd think to myself, how could I ever achieve that position of power? And I suppose over the last while of being youth activist, I've realized that you don't need to be at those levels to create change and affect and influence others. So I kind of found my power through just becoming active and becoming involved in my own community and in areas of interest for mine. So I didn't really know where to start to get involved. I was like, I want to make this change, but where do I go? What do I do? So I started by joining local Corleone and Og, and that's kind of a path that I've seen quite a few people go down. And I found, even in that position where I kind of got my feeding and I got my footing, I found that I had a voice there, and my voice could have some impact on maybe local policy, local government, or even just minds of local people. And I gained that confidence to then move on and lead my own projects in organisations such as the Irish Second Level Students' Union, where I kind of looked at my own skills, what I can bring to the table in terms of creating change. Maybe it's my public speaking, maybe it's my leadership skills, or graphic design. It could be anything. And when I started out, I definitely encountered some barriers, and some of them were maybe the rural-urban divide for me living in Monaghan. And I suppose it was difficult to reach the centres of youth voice and activism. They're often centralised in places like Dublin or Cork or somewhere. But even during COVID, the COVID pandemic, I found that brought me closer to those centres of youth voice, and it brought me closer to learning skills and training and improving my activism. It really boosted my own work in that area. And I kind of didn't know of these opportunities when I was in these kind of working and operating in my remote space. And kind of what I did to kind of overcome that, or try and kind of jump over that hurdle, was by reaching out to those who I knew were involved in youth activism, either in locality or just across Ireland or even Europe. And I found that I really learned about the plethora of opportunities that were available there. And I also grew my network and was able to work in teams and kind of create more collective action, which was absolutely fantastic. And other barriers were kind of social barriers, even within my area, within my peers even. And one thing that I kind of know of other people experiencing as well was me being kind of a young man in activism. I found friends of mine like kind of looking at me as less of a masculine kind of guy, because I was campaigning for things like period poverty and LGBT issues and mental health. And that kind of affected my own self-esteem, my confidence, and made me question if I wanted to go down this path or not. But through getting involved in this activism, I began to change the minds of those around me as well, and open their eyes, I suppose, to that kind of bigger picture and to possibly other ways of thinking and mindsets, which were kind of maybe in contrast to those in my traditional kind of rural area and background. So I kind of maybe first felt like I had that ability, that power, the ability to make an influence when I started working on my mental health campaigns and resources, and felt like I could make some tangible change in the way people are educated in mental health. And that was through networking and finding others who had the similar interests and kind of work together with them on projects. Even near the beginning, when I was working with Corleone and Og or Amnesty International on campaigns like direct revision and racism, I found that even simple social media campaigns and the impact that they could have on other people's work, on my work, on other people's minds, that really had a big difference. And that's where I really learned that, wow, something that I do, something that I thought up in my head, something that I implemented myself and created myself, really did have an impact there. So that's kind of the moment that I realized that maybe I do have power, and it just started to kind of snowball from there, and that's where I developed that from. So I'd love to invite maybe someone else in the group here, maybe Callum or Callum or Alicia or someone to come in there if they want.
Yeah, no, I'd love to jump in there, Adam, and I think it's a really strong message that it's a weird one, activism, this word we call activism, and how young people perceive change, and especially in our close circles. And I suppose one thing that I struggled with when I came and started my journey, I still feel that I'm still new on the journey, even though it's been nearly 10 years now of trying to push change, whether it be through scouts or through local government or different things like that. But I suppose the main thing that I was always faced with was this massive barrier of tokenism. And I think it's often looked past when we talk about young people trying to strive for change. But unfortunately, it's incredibly evident when it comes to actually implementing that change. And I suppose to share a short story about my own experience with tokenism. I'm 18 as of now, as of about a month ago. But I was elected to the Limerick City and County Council's Strategic Policy Committee on Climate Action, Biodiversity and the Environment at the age of 17. And it was such a different experience because I knew no other young person involved at local government. I knew young councillors, maybe at the age of 30, but I never got the experience to meet other young people trying to strive for change in those local democratic places. And it's because there's a massive barrier there. And luckily, with what I like to call brute force and ignorance, I found my way through many different platforms and different things like that to actually get into that civic space and to really try and implement that change. But unfortunately, once I hit that stage, I was met with more tokenism. And as a quite a young person, new to the civic space, not having anyone to guide me in that way, I was met with a lot of hostility from people who had been there for many years, which is understandable from their stance. But I really wanted to strive for change, and I was tokenized as this radical left wing young person because of simply my age before they had even spoke to me, before they had even seen anything I had done, before our even first meeting. I was receiving messages, emails, replies to articles that had been put up saying that I shouldn't be in that space. And I think that's a massive issue that I faced. But how I overcame that was through this little thing I like to call validation. And I think that we as young people aren't educated enough on the power of validation and the power that we hold within ourselves. And it's only recently that I've actually come to terms with the power of this little or even big thing that we have up there called our mind. And it's always been something that in some way I've neglected, and I suppose I've pushed for change in so many different settings, trying to create a positive shift for the people that matter to me and for the issues that I believe are fundamentally wrong. But unfortunately, we're met with this thing: am I good enough? Am I actually do I have the ability to take on this project? Do I have the ability to actually implement the change I want to see? And I really struggled with that. I did, and I haven't actually spoken about it before, but validation is such a massive topic that we don't see people talking about. And I don't think that until you validate yourself, like we're so used to validating ourselves through likes on Instagram, through Snapchat streaks, through different things like that, that we often don't take a step back and actually give ourselves a pat on the back and say, wow, that was really cool, man. Like you deserve to enjoy yourself because you've pushed for that change and you've seen that change. And although it may have an impact in so many different ways, and you might not see that impact, it is having an impact. And I think it's really important to remember that your work won't have value until you value your work. And until that point, it's very hard to go because like you're running on a burnout where you're relying on other people to validate the work that you're doing, when in no way shape or form, when you're in an activism bubble or in a bubble that you want to make change, that you should actually find the power. And I suppose lastly, which probably does tie into the validation, and like Adam had mentioned, was being a guy in activism, being a guy standing up for change. It's quite a strange one. And I think in general, being someone who stands for change and someone who goes against the norm. And I know when I was probably in second year, I really started sharing the work I was doing, and I really started talking to my friends about it. And unfortunately, those who I thought were close to me or thought were closest to me weren't interested in it. They didn't want to hear anything about it, and in turn, I focused on my work, and I sacrificed friendships for that, and I sacrificed my status in school. Like I was that lad, we can call it. I was two-time county minor. I broke an All Ireland record before in the running. Like I was this big, I suppose, jock you could label it, walking around school in my county gear, thinking I was class. Like I thought I was class, but it wasn't until that I actually broke it down and started sharing the work I was doing outside of that people started to look differently at me. Like, oh, Callum isn't just this person that plays football. Callum isn't just this person that rocks around in his county hampset thinking he's class. He's someone that's pushing for change. And I think it's really important that, especially in these times where we are so isolated, that you find your tribe within this and find those safe spaces that you enjoy. And I have to say to the three of you and everyone watching on the Young People's Committee, it is a safe space for me. I quite enjoy coming to our meetings and working with you all. And for all young people watching, find those spaces, find those people that you can trust and work with. And most importantly, don't stop pushing for change. So now I'd like to invite one of my fellow amazing young people to jump in.
I'll jump in because I can really identify with a lot of the things you spoke about there. It's quite similar to, I suppose, how I got involved in activism. I don't think that I can actually pinpoint exactly when I kind of understood that I was into activism or like wanted to engage in that kind of area. You can ask my friends or particularly my family. I've always been a bit of a pain. Dinner conversations are interesting. I have a very strong sense from a young age of what is just and unjust. And but originally, so while I've always been like involved in the community side of things and that kind of thing, I didn't really fully get a taste of, I suppose, advocating until maybe I was about 16. And this might be news to some of you, but I was a big sports person. I played table tennis, and I've been playing for a couple of years at that point. And I might have done, had a couple of titles, Irish titles under my belt, a couple of Irish caps. But while I loved playing it and it was great and I made brilliant friends, it might not surprise you, but there was a huge amount of sexism in the sport, especially not really between, the other players, but actually in the way that the women's game just was not valued the same way the men's game was. We were denied really, the same opportunities to, play abroad or to even, have a go at things. Our game wasn't valued the same way. And at that time, I put quite a lot of effort into quite a long time training. I've been playing for quite a few years. And I was spending a lot of time, going up to Dublin and training. As I said, I'm from the depths of West Cork. It's a trek. And it's really frustrating because they just didn't value us. And my dad used to drive me up to these things, and I bent the absolute ear off him on the way back from these events, and saying how unfair it was, how frustrating it was. And he actually took me along to the Munster branch AGM, and they were the guys who organized table tennis in Munster. And he was like, "You should run for this. You should run." And I was like, "Sure, this is for the old ones. Like, I'm not an adult. I can't get involved in some committee. Jesus, don't be silly, Dad." But I went along, and I ended up being elected the youngest person ever at 16 to the Munster branch. And the role I was elected to, which had been dead and dormant for a couple of years, was the women's officer. And I was like, oh God, what have I got myself into? I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what to do. But you know, I wanted to do something. I was like, do you know what? Here's my chance. I've got a bit of clout to my name, I guess. Let's see what I can do. And didn't manage to get much done, to be honest. While the opportunity to, you know, get my voice out there and start talking about it, I definitely did. But it wasn't the same as like with Callum, you were saying how like, you know, you got those comments and stuff about people being like, you shouldn't be here. Didn't get any of that. What I got was apathy and people just being like, you know, they're like, I'm really passionate. This is wrong. Eh. So that made it harder to engage. But what I did, well, that was frustrating. What I actually found, what I took away from it, the whole experience is that I was able to show the other female players that there was someone on their side. There was someone there who was willing to fight their fight. And it's a small thing, you know, it's table tennis. Probably not a lot of people realize that was a bit like it's a sport you can play in Ireland or play at a high level. But it was something and it was a step for me. And before that, I hadn't really engaged at a larger level, but it was something I wanted to change. I felt it was wrong. And once I took that first step to, I suppose, the first step to speaking out, being like, I'm not happy with this, more people came up to me at events and were like, you're dead right. That's wrong. I hate that. And people, you know, we kind of like more rallied together. It built a solidarity. We're like, well, before we hadn't really, you know, spoken about it. After that, I felt like there was more of a community who felt the same way. And yeah, it really motivated me. While I didn't like manage to achieve, I suppose, tangible change, you know, they didn't really start valuing the women's game more or anything. It let others know that there was people there, but it also let me know that when I did speak up, it wasn't me on my own. There was a community behind me. And I've kind of held that really strongly to heart as I've, I suppose, progressed or got involved in other areas. It kind of gave me a motivation. I was like, oh, I'm not the only one in this. And I think that's really applicable to a lot of people. It's the first step is the hardest one to take. And once you find the strength to have your voice heard, it becomes, I don't know, it kind of just comes out in a rush. You're like, you get this sense of motivation. And like Callum said, you know, and with Adam, with like Cortland and Oak, you find your networks, you find people, and you're like, oh, I have a community behind me. And that gives you just, oh, it just gave me such strength. It made me feel so good. I was like, this is actually enjoyable. I'm enjoying this and I can see the change happening. While it was small, it was a start. Yeah, that's just a little bit about how I felt, I suppose. Yeah. I don't know if anybody else has anything to say. Maybe, I don't know, Alicia.
I'll come in. I don't have any county medals, but I'll try. Yeah, I suppose it's interesting actually. Just hearing about like sport and how that's had such an association with like everyone's activism. And like I was just thinking for me, I was involved in Cortland and Oak, and the week I went to the AGM and the week I got interviewed for the national executive position, I had just broken my sternum, my chest bone playing rugby. And I remember knowing that like I had training every Saturday and I just joined rugby and I was really, really, really interested and like loved it. Hence why I broke my sternum. But then suddenly my Saturdays were like freed up by this horrible incident. And I was able to commit to the national executive position for Corla. And it's just amazing to think of what would have happened if I hadn't broken my sternum during that rugby game. Would I have said yes or no? Because I seem to think that at the time I probably wouldn't have done it. Even though I was interested in Corla, I was already kind of, you know, pre-involved with the rugby. So it's kind of interesting how sport can influence a lot of people's journeys into activism. But I suppose for me, going a bit off that topic, I know that there was a period of time in 2019 at a specific event where a politician in Ireland, who shall not be named, um, told a group of us, of young people, that young people shouldn't get involved in politics, that, go and like live your life and worry about that later, and don't get involved too young because you won't have the experience. But like, what experience do we need? Like, what do you know that we don't know? Like, we are facing the same issues that you are, and we're the generation that is most awake to these issues and fighting to change them. So don't try and shut us out of this space that you should be trying to get us into more. And I suppose sometimes, and it ties back into the validation concept that Calum and Maya, you were talking about, in that sometimes because somebody is older than us, or because somebody is in a more powerful position, such as a politician, or maybe it's a teacher, or someone in a powerful position that is respectable, we feel that, that they know best, and that they're always going to be right, and that they're much wiser than us. But that's not particularly true. And I don't think that's true at all. I feel like we can listen to these people, but we don't have to be influenced by them. And I suppose in that sense as well, like, for me, like, for climate action, I'm not like a climate scientist. I've never claimed to be one. But I can recognize that we're in a climate crisis, and I can speak up about it. So this self-validation is powerful. And just because you don't have a PhD in climate science doesn't mean that you can't recognize and speak up that there are wrongs in this area and that they need to be solved, and the people to solve them are X, Y, and Z. You can say that, and you don't need people cannot put you down for that. And I suppose another thing in saying that is, about listening. And I've been thinking about this kind of since lockdown, particularly because it's become more important to listen to people. Because I feel like when I'm online learning, I can I have to listen so hard to my lectures and to the meetings I'm in, because if I'm in a room in a meeting, you're less likely to look at your phone if someone's speaking in front of you. Whereas you can just have your phone on your lap and be looking down at it in these meetings. So when it comes to activism, I think we have to listen to other people and be able to take on what they're saying. And that's so important. I feel like when we're young, we're like, oh, it's my opinion. I'm very opinionated. Like, I was totally that person. And my opinion matters. Everyone else, go away. But with obviously that comes with maturity. But when you're in this space, it's so important that we really are listening to people and listening to what they have to say. And sometimes we won't understand where they're coming from, and sometimes we won't have the same opinion as them, but that's okay. And it's powerful to be able to listen to people and take in what they're saying without it becoming this huge thing. And I think that's, extremely, especially in the last few months, it's become more obvious that that's something we need to be more wary of. And I suppose in saying that, there's times where in my activism, definitely, and I'm sure it's the same for you guys, where I felt like giving up. I've literally sat down a couple of times over the last 4 years and wanted to throw away my phone. Well, I wouldn't throw it away; I would donate it away. But there's been times where I literally wanted to delete social media. I've become so close to pressing the delete button on Instagram, and for various reasons, like because change wasn't happening fast enough, or maybe some horrible report came out about an issue like climate change and how it's coming faster, or about statistics of how of how LGBT people, young people, are treated in schools. And all of these things are it can make you feel like you're not being impactful enough. And I've grown to learn that nobody can change the whole world. Nobody can influence it. Even Donald Trump, even he can't even do that, even though he may want to and maybe thinks he can't. But the power that we have, that every single person has, is that we have the power and ability to change one person's world. It's very simple. You can change a parent, a friend, any young person. And that's the power we have. And we all have that power within ourselves. And I think that's, again, comes back to validation and us as young people and the influence that we do have.
Thank you for that amazing story, Alicia. We've had some fantastic messages there of validation, acceptance, prejudice, and youth activism. I hope you all really enjoyed our stories about maybe our difficulties, times we wanted to quit, even as Alicia pointed out there, and maybe you learned something about that and learn something about how we overcame our barriers, and maybe you can apply that to your own path moving forward. So I'm going to pass you back to Maya now. Just to introduce the next session. So thanks for.
Yeah, so I really hope you enjoyed that. As you can see, we all come from really different backgrounds and we all started at a point, and it's the starting and the seeing that you want to make a change. And once you have got to that point, there is no going back. So yeah, we have another session now, and this time we're going slightly further afield. And David, who is facilitating this, will tell you more about the amazing speakers who he's going to be talking to. So I'd like to now invite David, Alex, and Lavon for the next session.
Hello, everybody. Great conversation. Just to start, my internet and my electricity went in the house. So if I go, you will know why, and Callum will take over. So just to begin, I have a little quote. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. So I'm delighted to see so many people joining us for this event. I know it's not long until the toy show begins, but first we have some serious topics we'd like to bring up. I can guarantee you that these discussions will be worth having. So we've all heard the famous phrase that power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Often called the last dictator in Europe, today marks 110 days since President Lukashenko spit on democracy and rigged the elections yet again in Belarus. Over 26,000 citizens have been arrested and fined for taking part in peaceful protests against Lukashenko and his actions. There have been over 4,000 statements of torture and violence, and many people have been killed. There is always some danger in speaking truth to power, but our first guest today lives in a world where power is held by only one man. It makes me think of the emperor having no clothes. In this case, Lukashenko has been naked for years. We're delighted to be joined by Lavon Maruzau, International Secretary of Rada, which is the National Youth Council of Belarus. Lavon is a member of the expert group on youth rights at the European Youth Forum and has spoken at the UN Human Rights Council. Lavon lost his job in university back in 2016 when he spoke out to his students about taboo issues such as freedom and democracy and the continuous use of the death penalty. So before we begin, I would just like to quickly introduce the term agency. Agency refers to the ability to shape one's life. Collective agency refers to situations in which individuals pool their knowledge, skills, and resources and act in concert to shape their future. For me, RADA is the definition of collective agency. RADA were awarded the first ever Youth Rights Award by the European Youth Forum for their tireless work. In a country filled with oppression, RADA have been a shining light. I would now like to hand over to Lavon to give us a real insight into life inside Belarus today.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Are you hear me? It's okay. Yeah.
Perfect.
Great. First of all, I would like to thank you, National Youth Council of Ireland, to invite me to your beautiful talks. Before I talk, I hear your colleagues, and honestly to say, I feel myself a little bit old. And of course, it was very interesting stories. And one more thing, a little bit about your chat. I saw, because one or two more points. This year, before the COVID-19, I was in Ireland, and I visited some of cities like Galway, of course Dublin, of course Cork, and but anyway, and of course, and last year I was in Beirut too. Hi to Beirut. What's about Belarus? Thank you very much, David, for my introduction. Yes, I'm International Secretary of Belarusian National Youth Council. I worked for last 2 years, but before I have a job in university, and also I worked in probably I look a little bit older, but I'm only 32 years old. And previously, I worked in university in Vietnam, in Ukraine, in Poland, in Lithuania, in Georgia, and in Netherlands. In 2000, from 2013 to 2017, I worked in university in Minsk, like associate professor in human rights law and international law, and I made some lecture about LGBTQ rights and about death penalty rights and about minority rights, and of course about the international human rights standard in Belarus too, how to protect them, I mean human rights. After that, administration of my university come to me, and first call it was like they invite me, made a talk, something like I don't know, to talk, and after that they asked me to delete my job profession in on Facebook. Yeah, it's very funny, but it was like a first call. After that, after 1 year, some people from KGB, I don't know, do you know what does it mean KGB? Like special department of police here in the post-Soviet Union countries. Like I don't know, probably you know Stasi in Germany in 1990. Yeah, the same issue. Yeah, and after that they come to me personally and ask what I do, and ask to and come to my parents, to my own city, probably like this so small city like Galway in Ireland. Yeah, not far away from the capital of Belarus, from Minsk. And also, on the end of the year, I lost my job and tried to look for new position in NGO sphere. Yeah, and find one great position in Belarus National Youth Council. Probably, David, I don't know. Should I explain what's going on in Belarus shortly or not?
It's up to yourself. We're going to have a little Q&A session. If you'd like to speak a little bit more, or else we can move on. It's completely up to yourself right now.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. So I'm going on with a small introduction. What's happens in Belarus last 3 weeks, and I saw your comments and chat. If you have like special comments or interesting for something, maybe not in Belarus, but in my professional or personal experience, let's do it, and I will try to honestly answer. Since 1990, more than just we're talking first of all about Belarus. Since 1990, more than 400 people were sentenced to the capital punishments. I mean, death penalty in Belarus. Yes, I'm right. I'm sure that in Belarus still exists death penalty, and very recently, this generally two brothers of 90 and 20 years old were sentenced to this penalty. I was on this court trial and understand how it's unlawful and undemocratic, and any words. Now they are dead. Last month, our general secretary, just imagine you're like director for the organization, or I don't know, of your NGO, our general secretary has been searched as part of criminal cases and mass riots in Belarus. Police and people without uniform broke the door and of her house and confiscated all phones and all computers. The general information secretary, I mean my colleagues, are now of course in safe places, because they have to leave a country in security reason. For the last 3 months in Belarus, more than 26,000 people was detained, and for some day of prison, like minimum 5, maximum 50. 900 criminal cases about torture in prison, and more than 6 people was already killed on the street by police. And just imagine it, no one criminal case was not investigated by police and by authorities. And I understand that some of you probably not fully understand what's going on, what's happened in Belarus right now, and probably some of you don't know where place or locate on my country or something like that. But let's try to Google Belarus means protest, and let's see what's going on. What's going on with your probably future colleagues, with the same young people like you in our country. And yeah, probably, yeah, David, right now show you a little bit photo, but if you have a question, of course.
Perfect, Levon. Thank you very, very much for that. So I just want to say those were powerful words and insight, Levon. Just for everybody at home, we'd love for you to be involved in this discussion. So feel free to add your questions throughout, as Callum and I will be leading a Q&A after this. So now I would like to introduce our second guest. Alex Bustani is a Lebanese climate activist and a fellow Greenpeace European changemaker with me. We met at a civil rights defenders / Greenpeace training week in Poland. He's also an architect and a founder of FRA's Eco Heroes, a group promoting community-led green initiatives and sustainability. Alex will now give us a quick introduction into the work of FRA's Eco Heroes and tell us a little bit more about what exactly they do, along with some initiatives that they have been a part of.
All right. Hi, David. How's it going?
Hey, Alex. Great to see you.
Been a while, man.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to brief you in a bit on FROZ, what we actually do. So FROZ is actually an environmental startup, and it focuses mainly on the waste crisis, and specifically on shifting consumption behavior from consumerists, so people that actually consume a lot and waste a lot, to conscious consumers, to people that actually think about the products that they're buying, the impacts, positive, negative impacts, where it came from, what it's made of. Our vision is to actually increase or expand the eco-conscious community. And we're doing that by attracting people that are more or less in the neutral zone. So people that know that they should reduce waste, but they're either not engaged, because they're either they see it as inconvenient, or they are skeptical about whether or not their individual impact or their individual efforts will actually make impact. So we started out in 2018. We were four bros, so we're the FROZ bros. We actually interacted with 1,000 millennials, and it turned out that having something convenient, feeling part of a community, and seeing actually the impact that we make actually engages us, or engages millennials, to reduce waste. And basically, this is where FROZ came in. It's a community platform that engages millennials through convenient activities. It tracks how much waste they've reduced, and it then rewards them for it. Now, for the types of activities, we're basically tapping into or linking them to people's habits. So what they already do, what they like doing. So we want people to actually not change their habits, but change the way they actually do their habits. So we started out with runners. We did something called Run with FROZ at the Beirut Marathon in 2018, where we were about 70 runners. We picked up about 8,000 plastic bottles along the 8K fun run. So by doing that, we were actually able to raise awareness around plastic litter, plastic consumption, recycling, and actually showing that picking up waste can actually be fun. After doing that, we then tapped into hiking. We did something called Hike Mnifroz, where we were about the same concept, just about 100 people, and we picked up about 10,000 or 12,000 plastic items. We then tapped into the techno scene, so clubbing. We partnered out with a club in Beirut, and we encouraged people, or the customers, to bring along with them their own reusable cup. And every person that brings along their cup would get a free drink in return. So that helped a lot. And those that did not bring their cup with them, we actually wrote down their names on the plastic cups provided by the club, and encouraged them to reuse that same cup instead of throwing their name in the bin. It was actually a pretty fun event. So I think that was the time where I actually started liking techno. So after these 3 initiatives, we started to think about a project that would actually help us sustain our startup. So we developed and are launching in about a month our community-based e-commerce platform. So it's an e-commerce platform that gives you access to many eco-friendly products, and it highlights each product's impact. So you can know each product that you're buying or using, the amount of impact that you're doing. Every product you basically purchased or used through the platform, you'd be able to see how much waste you've reduced on your profile. And then you can share it with others in the community. So that would create a bit of positive competition between the different users. And the best part is that the more you reduce waste, the more you get rewarded with things that you actually like. So we believe by designing this system, we are actually making it convenient. So encouraging people to actually do reduce waste in an easy way with what they already do, whether it's shopping or running or hiking or partying or any different activity. We then track their impact shown on their Froze profile. So this would engage them. It actually embraces transparency, so they can know exactly how much they're contributing to waste reduction and compare it with others in the community and see the communal effort. So you can actually see that your impact adds on with the impact of others, and that would make a really meaningful impact. And then we give back through rewards through this, and this hopefully would incentivize them to keep on reducing, keep on using these products, and keep on raising awareness. And hopefully that would maybe spark like a ripple effect all over. So in a nutshell, that's Froze. I hope that was clear. And if you have any questions or if anything wasn't clear, David, please shoot away.
Fantastic, Alex. It's great to see your face. It's been a little while.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. So we're also going to be joined by one of my colleagues, Callum. I think he'll be coming in for the Q&A session. We have a little bit of time. And again, just to say that I have lost electricity in our whole housing estate and my battery is dying very soon. So Callum will probably be leading most of the Q&A. So I'm just going to get stuck in as quick as I can. And when you see that I'm gone, that's the reason. So Yvonne, the first question for you. When RADA was set up and you had dealings with the state over the years, I see that they haven't recognized you. When was RADA set up and how have the dealings with the state been?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Thank you. In 2004, just imagine in 2004 we have more than 100, I think, member organization, and after that, one pro-government or organization wanted to join us, and we say no because you don't recognize, this organization don't recognize human rights values, human rights standard, and other things of democracy and other. And after that, like official government go to the court, to constitutional court, like highest court in Belarus, and after I think 3 or 4 months, we lost our registration because we do something wrong. But the organization was established in 1992, and till now, yeah, Belarus authorities, if we can call it authorities now, don't recognize this. But yeah, we will do what we do. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Again, I'm just going to keep on you for 1 minute, and Callum will be taking over. The battery is going. I just want to talk a little bit about power of symbols and narrative. So how important has the media been in maintaining power in Belarus? And also more recently, how important has it been in maybe challenging that power? And just when it comes to symbols, would you tell us a little bit more about the flowers, the women who were coming out on the street in white and who had the flowers, and also a little bit more about the red and white flag, if you could?
Yeah. It's an interesting question because we have a red, like white flag from 1991 till 1994, and after that, Lukashenko come to the government, to the presidential, and change the flag to almost the same from Soviet Union. He says that people from the white flag supported people from Germany on the Second World War, and that's why we don't need to use this flag. But it's not true, as usually what our presidents say. And what's about flowers? It's very interesting. It's a new method of protest from our people in Belarus. Many placards and many banners we have on our protest, which you can read, but probably in Russian or in Belarusian language. Just you beaten us, you torture us, and we made you like a gift with a flower, and we wish you all best. And of course, in media, when you see our protest, it looks like very powerful, incredible, and we say in Belarus here that it's not revolution; it's like moral protest. People have no or more powerful to see what's going on here in Belarus. We don't want we don't want to say that just, for example, Russia or European Union are enemy for us. We want to live in a normal European country, and that's why we're doing it.
Perfect. Yeah, I think it's very powerful symbols. Again, I'm going to be gone soon. So, Alex, I just want a quick question for you. We attended Poland, the Greenpeace Civil Rights Defenders Camp together. I just want to know, how did that affect or how did that impact on your work? I remember taking inspiration from the activists, all of the activists, powerful activists from Poland and all over Europe there. And then also learning about social movements from Gandhi up until Extinction Rebellion. And the Salt March, obviously, of Gandhi. And then just overall, maybe the biggest takeaway I had from it was the importance of non-violent direct action. I guess that's something I've been involved with here as well. But I'd just like to hear what you took.
All right. David, I would double down on the part about... can you guys hear me? All right. All right. I think I doubled down on the part about learning from all the other volunteers and all about all the other activists that were with us in Poland. I would add community building skills, all the different tools that we learned there from all the experts. And specifically, I would love to mention about all the networking that happened there. I mean, I met a lot of amazing people there, all with different ideas, and we were actually able to make some partnerships with some specific people. I actually learned about something called Fab City or Fab Labs, and it actually turned out to be working in parallel with what we're doing at Froze here in Beirut. So actually meeting all the awesome people and all the different tools that we learned there was really awesome.
Thanks a million, Alex. So we have lost David, unfortunately, but I'm back. Lavon, my friend, it's great to see you again. Thank you very much for virtually joining us in Ireland. Unfortunately, you can't be here, but soon again, I'm sure. So obviously, we've met through the European Youth Forum, and there you're a member of the expert group on youth rights. What do you think the role? What's the role of youth rights and the role of human rights as a whole when facing barriers in our society?
Yeah, it's true. I'm a member of expert group of youth rights in European Youth Forum for next 2 years. And just for example, on 2019, yeah, I made the same meeting like you now in Georgia, and we talked with youth activists about youth rights in Belarus. And a little bit about previous talking, a previous part of your talking. Just mention when young people don't have enough experience in different field. It's of course not true. When you want to change something, you can do it. Just for example, this year we prepared our first alternative report on youth rights for Human Rights Council, just only about youth rights. Of course, we don't know. Me personally, I was one of the author of this document. I don't know how do it. But if you can find some people who understand your ideas and who can help you on some technical moments. Just do it. Don't wait anything. Just my experience in 32 years. I started probably some years ago to find some friends in my mind and to find some process where I can feel myself very well. And of course, it's used rights. And now I'm working with it. And as you saw from the last European Youth Forum General Assembly, we made it. We made our second resolution about death penalty also, and it was really difficult just to write those documents. I need more than half of a year to understand what's going on really in Belarus, and of course I need experience in law, in national law in Belarus. Just for example, already also we did some activities in volunteer law here in Belarus. And last year we was in Beirut. We are friend with National Youth Council of Lebanon, with YAP. They did those documents, just imagine, 10 years ago. They already prepared, but only now they use it. They use this document, and we are like from other country come to Beirut and come to Lebanon and say, guys, can you explain how you did it? Yeah, and it was really cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Like when we look at it, like, and we take a step back from, I suppose, these incredibly broad terms on an international basis, it all ties back down to the core of it all. That when you find that group of people that you can really work with and develop these ideas to make that fundamental change is really when the magic happens. So thank you very much, Levon. Alex, I know you are an incredible climate activist. We haven't met before, but it's very nice to meet you. So I suppose my question is around the role of the climate movement in developing our society as a whole. So as we see it, like we see the broad term of sustainability, which encompasses all parts of our society, but climate plays a massive role in the whole achievement of the sustainable development goals. But in that, it encompasses so many different parts of our society when it comes to jobs, when it comes to livelihoods, when it comes to where people can live, where the environment we live in. So what do you think the role of the climate movement and the role that climate action can have in the overall frame of society?
Uh, all right, I think what's happening right now worldwide with all the technology that's emerging and all the different movements that have been happening in the past 2 years are actually giving a lot of hope in where we might be going in the next, I don't know, 10 years. With especially with the youth actually taking charge in what's happening and impacting other generations, bigger generations such as millennials and baby boomers, and actually impacting certain politicians. It's definitely one of the most important topics that we should be talking about and concerned about because of everything that's happening, and we're actually seeing all of the impacts or the effects of climate change in real time right now, along with all the scientific data. I just wanted to share a point about that regarding in Lebanon. This is one of the main issues that we have it here, just to maybe contextualize it a bit. I'm sure maybe some of you maybe know part of the issues that are happening in Lebanon and mainly in Beirut with the massive political issues, the economic crisis. I'm sure you've heard of the blast that happened in the port. And that actually put a lot of people in certain deprived areas. So if you're maybe familiar with the pyramid of needs, so you actually need basic needs, which are maybe shelter, food, etc., to actually think about long-term stuff. And because of the recent events that happened these few years, it actually put a lot of people in the bottom part of the pyramid. So a lot of people are actually concerned with shelter, with their own lives, their safety, food, and this has been a very big issue here in the country. So you can't really talk with someone and convince them about something that is showing a bit of effect and will be shown even more in 10, 20 years when all they're worried about is what are they going to eat. in the next week. So this has been a big obstacle and challenge for us here. That's why mainly, at least my organization is focused on waste, because one of the big issues that are actually evident and people can see is actually waste on the streets, waste on the beaches, in our food, in our water. So we hope to actually use this as a door, use the waste crisis as a door for us, or as a window to actually tap into these guys and start raising awareness about this topic, about environment through waste, and hopefully with time and with the betterment of the country, we might be able to tackle bigger issues such as climate change or such as transition to clean energy. But one of the good things that has been happening and started actually last year was the Fridays for Future movement. And that movement arrived in Lebanon. We have a large enough group of school students that have been striking, of course, before Corona, once a month at least. And that movement was growing until then. So I believe when things cool down, if they actually cool down, things would be going in the positive direction once again. But again, because of all the different technologies that have been going on, I have a really positive mindset and hope for where we'll be going in the next 10 years. Things are becoming easier and cheaper. So more people will be hopping on that train.
I completely agree, and I think tying into what you said, like young people play such a role in that, whether it be through making the noise on the streets with the Fridays for Future movement, or whether it be coming up with those creative and innovative ways to raise the awareness among all the people around them to really make that shift that we need in society to become more sustainable, more climate friendly, and overall a more just society. So Lavon, I have one question for you. It's based around motivation and finding strength during hard times. Obviously, the situation in Belarus right now is incredibly difficult for many people in your society, especially young people. And how have you kept yourself motivated and striving for that change through these incredibly difficult times?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, honestly to say, but I wanted to tell you about one small story when I was a lecturer in university and my like prohibited lecture after 5 p.m. on Friday when all people from administrative come home and leave the university, and I understand that it's like a safe space. And after that, I explain what I wanna about minority, about equal rights, and like that. In one of the Friday, I explain or I do my lecture about LGBTQ rights. And after my lecture, there was no one question, but I go home and received one email with some words. Thank you very much. I feel myself alone before, but now I'm thinking and I feel and I saw that I'm not alone. And it was something incredible for me, and I feel myself very, I don't know how, but it was like 5 years or 6 years ago, but I remember till now it. But when we're talking about situation in Belarus now, of course, some of young people in Belarus know many languages. Of course, English, Germany, and me personally live a lot of time in Germany. And of course, I can live and I can move to European Union and find a new job. But me personally, like a person, like a citizen of Belarus, of course, love my country, like you, your country, and wanted to stay here. And of course, every day you wake up and thinking how it's going with your friends, and trying to help your friends. Just for example, now I'm not living in my private personal apartment in security reason because people from police can come to my apartment and to my friends. But like when I can help with any ways to pay for rent of accommodation or turn some money to some friends, I do it like other guys here in Belarus. Yeah, I think it's more motivation to live in another democratic country.
Fantastic, Lavon. And just to say that I know Lavon has to go, so we'd really like to thank him so much. Your insight has been, I don't know, priceless. Really thank you. And I know that we will be in touch in the future, and that people here from Ireland have sending their solidarity to you, and from all over
Thank you very
Europe
much,
and the world.
guys. Take
So thank
care.
you, Lavon.
Yeah.
And just one final question for Alex, and then I'll let Callum wrap up. Alex, again, it's been great to see you. Really thank you for taking this. I'm just going to take a question from the comments, because we asked people to write in with some of their questions. And Dermot O'Brien from the National Youth Council as well has also said that it's so interesting to see how Alex is focusing on promoting and encouraging changes of habits. And his question is, how important is innovation and creativity in the work of his organization, your organization, Alex?
Well, it's actually one of the main pillars, if you want, and one of the main things that has helped us, in a way, succeed up till now. I mean, we've really been able to change some habits. I mean, there's a lot of people in our community. We have a community of 400 people, both on Facebook and on the ground. And most of them, not most of them, but a big bunch of them have actually shifted behavior from people that consume a lot to people that don't really know what to do regarding waste, and have actually started recycling, started purchasing in a conscious way. And I believe that happened and was able to happen because of somehow creativity and innovation. As I said before, we're a team of 4, so it's not just one mind thinking. It's at least 4 people, and we have now a more of a core volunteer group of 6 individuals. So the project that we work on is more of a brainstorm, human-centered design based solution or direction of a solution. So definitely creativity, just it's a creative bomb. So what actually happens there? So by a person throwing, let's say, I'm gonna take the Beirut Marathon example. So the Beirut Marathon was actually happening. So someone throwed a comment that, guys, maybe we can do something there. The other person mentioned plugging, which is actually a known thing in Sweden, where you jog and pick up waste. So we then said, okay, why not join plugging at the Beirut Marathon, since people are already there? And things just started building up over there in that direction. Innovation, as I mentioned in the previous answer, because of technology, it's a tool that we can either use it for good or bad. And actually embracing technology and thinking of how we can use this in an innovative way, in a creative way, to change for the better. In our case, behavior change regarding waste. That helped a lot, because it really tackles what people want. Actually, using these tools to tackle what people want, what people need in order to change. It's not our solution that we want to force it upon people. We want to understand what they want and use that along with the tools that we have with our knowledge about this topic to actually find a solution that serves them.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alex. It's
Thank you, Callum.
I think to wrap up this session, and I want to thank you and Lavon, who's left us now, for coming on and spending time speaking to us as the young people of Ireland and as the National Youth Council. It's been incredible, and I really do appreciate it. I want to thank you especially for your really strong message as a young person advocating for climate action and the need for it now, and the need for it all through our society, but as well as that, integrating that in creative and innovative ways to help other people understand, although they may not, but having that impact on one person. And I think it was said earlier as well, if you can change one person's mindset towards issues, you've done an incredible job as an advocate. So thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Callum. Thank you, David, for this cool opportunity. And really, it's amazing to see what you guys are doing and the message that you're trying to send to this generation. It's been a pleasure sharing with you my story, and hopefully see you soon, guys. And David, amazing to see your face again, man. And hopefully we'll have some more collabs in the future.
Absolutely, sooner rather than later. Now we're going to move on. I think Maya is next.
Yeah, so I will introduce our next session. This will be an interactive kind of engaging session with Keith who I'll invite up to take on this part. Cool.
How's it going? How's it going, everybody? Yeah, you're very welcome to this, I suppose, interactive session. So I suppose we just heard from amazing speakers about, I suppose, what power means for them. So now I kind of want to turn the tide and ask the audience some questions. And I'm going to feed in as well some of the comments that and some of your answers that we're going to get back. Okay. So our first question, I suppose, to the audience is, could you actually give examples of what it means to have power, or where you have gained that power? And also as well, where you have felt sometimes in your life maybe powerless and powerful. Yeah. So just take a moment or two to just think of those questions there and jot in some answers, and I'll read them out here. And we also have another question as well, which actually ties in really well to the next session. And that question is in regard to power and gender. So how do those kind of two link together? So for the second question as well, how do you think gender influences power? If you can think of anything with regard to that. So our two questions to the audience today. One of them is, how can you think of an example or a time in your life where you have felt powerless, but also a time where you actually felt quite powerful? And do you also think gender as an influencing factor towards power? I suppose just as well to link in with what some of the previous speakers have said, they've all kind of come and gone with their amazing, they actually really did give really amazing examples of them and power. And even when Maya was talking about herself in sports and how facing that kind of, I suppose, sexism and other kind of turmoils, and how she kind of reinvented herself and turned the tide in her favor. So it's just probably one example of what it means to be powerful. And then once we get that going, we can move on to our manifesto and just transition video. So again, if anybody can think of a few answers for that, can you think of an example where you have felt powerful and powerless? But also, do you also think gender has an influencing factor on whether or not you feel powerful or powerless? Let's see if the audience thinks. And even maybe as well, to again link in with what Alex and Levon said with regard to the current atrocities, I suppose, that's happening in Belarus and other countries across the world. How can maybe us as a community take our power individually and kind of transform it into a communal sense? Yeah, so if there is any other comments, Maya, I'm sure we will answer those pretty shortly. But as well, just to move on to the next kind of part of this program, we're going to also introduce, a few months ago, we published our manifesto. This manifesto was with regard to climate justice. And at the moment, our manifesto has reached over 2,000 signatories. So before we go to there, we do have one comment. And this is from Birdsong. Sally, is there a new area in politics, gender and power? Finland's coalition government is led by women, 4 of them in their 30s. That's a really, really important comment to actually add. I mean, the first place we look at, I suppose, is politicians and is people in power. Why in some countries is they're full of men? Why is it, you know, in some other countries like Finland, full of young women? You know, like it is a really important aspect to consider. Happy days. Yeah, so to our manifesto, I'm just conscious of time. So to our manifesto, so a few months ago, as I said, we launched our manifesto, who at the moment has reached over 2,000 signatories and pledges. So that will also be uploaded into the chat. We'd also ask you to add your pledge to that. And one of those main cornerstones, I suppose, of that manifesto is the essence of just transition. And some of you might think of maybe what just transition means for yous. But the Young People's Committee kind of had another bit of a perspective. And we designed a spoken word piece that was recently featured at an EEAC annual conference. So this will be a few minutes, and take a look, and we hope you enjoy it.
A just transition. She seems unsure about her mission, as if whatever is ahead of her seems like such a confliction. Still wandering, yet knowing where she needs to go. You can almost see the thoughts in her blue eyes, simply just at a flow. She feels guilty all of a sudden, as if she didn't want to leave anyone behind. Turns around to everyone and asks, why do you all seem so blind? Confused, she looks at all of the tampered communities. 'Twas as if they couldn't see just the plethora of open opportunities. As the bright green grass bristles against her toes, yet the hot air and smell of fuel infests at her nose. Sick she feels at where she is at, as if the world she sits in feels off, sick, or even just crap. Follow me, she yelps at an unbothered community, too busy with their lives as if they have this sense of immunity. It will be better, she states, even cleaner, she narrates, as if wherever she goes, a better future awaits. Division she notices, and how confused she seems at the minority communities facing adverse extremes. She talks about inclusive communities and fair societies. I promise, she said, as if that would quell our environmental anxieties. Sustainable fisheries and greener deliveries. She will be why we talk about such histories. Just transition is her name. Follow her now and leave no one to blame. Young people, old people, businesses and sectors. She talks to you to warn you before it festers. Urban, rural, everyone alike. She's calling you now, come and take your mic. She speaks of smiling oceans and clear emotions. It will be because of her we stopped all of these commotions. Smiling she begins, noticing communities listen. She calls on us to act now and end this division. Learn from this we must, and never ignore future signs. It will be because of her just transition that extends this world's deadlines. Just transition is her name. We must carry on forward together with her, with the clear absence of shame.
So, I hope you enjoyed that video. You might have recognized the voice of Keith, who narrated it. So next up, we have a session with Alicia, myself, and Saoirse McHugh. Alicia, do you want to introduce her and let us know a little bit more about her?
Yeah, no, my honour to introduce Saoirse McHugh. She is a native of Achill Island. She has been an environmentalist for as long as she can remember. Throughout her life, she's worked on agricultural projects around the world, volunteered with environmental NGOs, and completed a master's in sustainable agriculture. Frustrated with a lack of progress on environmental issues, she ran for the Green Party in the European and general elections. And although unsuccessful, her vision for a just and ecological sound society has earned her widespread support. She is currently working with students from the International Human Rights Law Clinic in NYCI and is a regular podcaster and works closely with various environmental and social justice organisations to fight for a better future for all. So we now welcome Saoirse McHugh. Hi, Saoirse.
Hello? Oh.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
You can hear me?
So can I.
How are you? Oh god, those introductions are so cringy to listen to. I was like, stop, shut up. They're the worst. I can't even do them. I have to get my partner to send them in because I'm like, I can't write them. They're awful.
No, honestly, I mean, maybe for you, but for us, it's an honor to have you here and to speak to you as two young people who are really into the environmental youth spectrum. You know, you're a real inspiration to us. So thank you for joining us truly, and giving the time, your very valuable time to us. We really value that. So to get into it, I suppose, the first question we have for you is today, in the earlier part of the session, we discussed the topic of power as young activists. You yourself are still a young activist. Reflecting back on when you first started this journey to where you are now, where did that start for you, first of all? And do you think that power played a big role, you know, either positive or negative?
Yeah, well, I suppose I think as someone mentioned earlier, it's hard to know where these kind of things start. Um, and even still, I find it weird to say I'm an activist because so much of what I've done and so much of what I've tried to do over the years has failed. And like someone else pointed out, you do see like certain activists that became these figureheads, and you're like, oh well, that's what an activist looks like. Um, but I suppose once you're taking action, once you are active, you're an activist. Um, but I think the issue of power definitely kind of slowed my coming around to getting involved in stuff because of the idea that I had, and I still struggle with, um, that I don't have power, and that the kind of the people and the systems you want to change are so enormously powerful. It can be, I found it really off-putting actually. And so for years I would, especially around environmental issues, I would see it, I would take all the stress and guilt and worry and anxiety, and then just try and like bury my head and actually like just desperately try and ignore it. Which by the way doesn't actually make anything feel better at all. um and so it was only kind of once I started taking action, um despite the belief actually that it would have no effect, that then you start to feel powerful. So it's not you feel powerful, or at least for me it wasn't you feel powerful and then you take action. It was quite the other way around. um and I definitely think myself, and in Ireland more generally, um access to the people that are generally perceived as being powerful is actually quite easy compared to other countries. But I think who we perceive as powerful is a whole different topic. So yes, I do find that kind of the maybe the societally accepted allocation of who has power can be quite an off-putting thing for. I like you're very kind calling me young. But when I was younger, especially, I found it to be quite intimidating, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, you know, when you're dealing with an issue like the climate crisis, it can be so overwhelming for us, and it can be so much pressure. And there's also kind of a rhetoric of, you know, well, don't complain about it. You also have to have the solutions, which I think to a degree isn't fair to put that pressure on any one individual or any one cohort of people. It's a, you know, it's a very shared responsibility, and the dynamic of that responsibility also varies. But I feel like young people, like you said, when we take action, we then feel the power. And I think, yeah, who we determine as powerful can actually have a huge influence on how far we get in achieving those changes as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I definitely always feel that like young people have more power than we realize, I guess. I don't know if like I don't know whether in terms of like power, what kind of power do you think young people have at the moment? I suppose for maybe people who are just discovering, the concept that, oh, even though I'm young, I do have power. I don't know. What do you think about in like terms of what kind of power, I guess?
I suppose the way I see power, and it's quite a simplified version of it, but it within certain structures, and say we're talking about environmental collapse, say, the orthodoxies, like what we're, oh, I'm a young person, so I do X, Y, and Z, or I act this way, or I, I listen to these kind of people. I think those kind of, would you even call them traditions, control our behavior a lot more than we think they do. And we give them power despite them not, materially or really even, legally controlling our lives. So I do find, and maybe we're wrong that, or maybe I'm wrong, but, all of us are kind of, we naturally kind of bind ourselves in and we say, oh, I can't do that and I can't step out. And you were talking about this earlier about this stepping out, but that feeling of not wanting to step out is a form of power that's had over us. And I do think people realizing that, and this sounds so naff, but people realizing that, like, this is it. This is literally all there is. This is the only life. This is the only, like, this is it. This is your short little time on earth. And do you really want to be bound by those sneakier powers of kind of like social kind of rules and organizations, and not making people feel awkward, and not just not disrupting things in any sort of way? And I think that's the biggest power that young people will have to overcome anyway. So I mean then that's the biggest power they have as well, is recognizing that actually this is just it. And just like you were saying earlier, saying this is wrong and I want something different, you're often, well, what are you going to do about it? That's the kind of
Yeah.
response you often get. And it's such a pile of shite, because, like, I think the reply to that is, well, what are you going to do about it? Like, what are you going to do when we're under 3 meters of water? Because that is a far more urgent thing than what I want. Like, let's just start, and of course it's always disingenuous when they say that, because they know exactly what needs to be done, and they know that they have to realize that, like, you just have to say goodbye to capitalism. It's gone. It's fine. And they don't want to. So, like, saying someone saying to you, what are you going to do about it? And it's like, okay, well, Noah, unless you've got an ark, you really need to be thinking, what are you going to do about it too? And I, like, it just, nothing drives me crazier than that question. It makes me feel like it makes me feel really violent towards people.
Oh no, as you're actually saying that there, you know how you're saying, like, oh, about, like, going against the grain and stuff, and that, we've only got one life. That actually makes me, I'm the kind of person where someone says, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna do it anyway. So now I'm like, right, I'm gonna use that, and I'm just gonna challenge everything. But yeah, no, I know what you mean as well about, like, that what are you going to do about it thing, because I've definitely found, like, trying to engage with some people, and they're like, you have to keep telling your stories, we really need to hear your stories and this kind of thing, and we're like, oh no, we're saying it, you're just not listening. It's like, it's the same kind of thing, like, what are you going to do about it? Oh, what are you gonna, oh yeah. The thought of it now.
No, it's true. And I think what you're saying and what ties into this is how a lot of the time, I think it's fair to say that a lot of people in the, like, climate movement get that question particularly. But within that realm of, like, telling our stories and that sort of, like, dialogue, I think that really comes into, like, a point I think Callum was making earlier about, like, tokenism, and, like, how we can be shoved in a room for a day and it's being made look like this, group of people or certain person or business or organization wants to have youth voice and youth participation, and that they're listening to us and that this is a space for you, and then sometimes the reality is that it's not, and it's all just a big show, and it's, I like to use the word youth washing. Like, it's just slab young little naive faces on a picture or a cover photo on Facebook, and suddenly this is the most, like, brilliant place and everything is great. And I mean, I think as well, I was actually only having this conversation today with someone. It's so horrible when you realize that, like when you're young and you get involved and suddenly you look back and you remember when, oh my God, like that was actually a point where we weren't really being listened to, but we were being used. Like our little naive fighting spirit was being used. And like I laugh now because I'm way more aware of it. And as an activist, I think generally, or when you're advocating for something, you have to be aware of the agenda. Like, what is the agenda, and what are you going to focus on and use to push that agenda and the agenda being to create the change needed. And I think a lot of people's agendas can get muddied and blurred along the way, and sometimes from the very beginning they're not what we would perceive as the right agenda. And I think that's another aspect that, I wonder, Saoirse, have you experienced this where, you've been involved in politics, so I assume you may have, but where people have a certain agenda that really isn't, morally good.
Yeah, and I think systems, especially more successful systems, will always try and co-opt and use energy from movements otherwise that would, provide a challenge to them. Like I was just recently talking on a panel about greenwashing, and I was saying it's in one way it's kind of an encouraging sign, because obviously what it is that, companies recognize that people do care about the environment, and they're like, shit, sorry, I keep swearing on this, I'm so sorry. Unless we
I kind of love
give
it.
them like they think like, okay, well, we're gonna have to give them some sort of eco wash, otherwise they'll turn away from us. So they're constantly, it's constantly just co-opting and defanging these movements. Now, thankfully, and thankfully, I suppose, especially with climate breakdown, like they can't take the energy out of that, unfortunately, because it is constantly increasing and getting more and more urgent. But you see it even in Irish politics, the use of enthusiasm and the use of social movement. Parties will just use them, and they'll use them to get elected, and then they get elected and you're like, huh, well, that's a bit disappointing, isn't it? Like, and you see it everywhere. You see it with the green wave, with change, with the revolution, and you're like, yeah, but you're all just elected again. And and I was running for, I have maybe a bit naively running for a seat myself, but it's really clear the closer I had gotten to politics in Ireland, anyway, is all I can talk for, that there'd just be quite a cynical use of different movements. And sure, you've seen it yourselves, like you've seen politicians like out at the Fridays for Future marches being like, oh, the young people, oh, they're great, oh, system change. And then you're like, oh, please, can you like just enact the bare minimum legislation? They're like, no, not at all, no, sorry. Yeah, and they're getting their photo taken and everything, and it's just sickening to watch.
Oh no, I actually had such an interesting experience with a politician that will remain unnamed. We're talking about climate and having a conversation about the importance of it. And he was like, oh, I only recently learned the importance that bees have to the environment. Like, wow, guys, did you know that bees help the environment? I was like, he's sitting in a room filled with young people who were climate activists. And
yes, we know about the bees.
Dude, you're like, how many years late? Like, geez.
It's the same. It's the exact same with the SDGs. It's like this whole new world to them. And we're like, we've been doing this since we were 12.
It's actually gas. Which actually one of the questions we did have for you was, do you think that the government has I suppose all the power in actually getting that change across? Like, while we're advocating for stuff and we're like asking them, please, please, will you just, do the decent thing? Do you think they actually have the power to change it? Because I suppose they keep telling us that they don't. But yeah, that was just a question we had. Yeah.
I think they do if they really, really wanted to. Like, look how they responded to COVID. But even with their response to COVID, you can see like they never fully stood up to the airline industry, for instance. And they, were constantly being pushed around by the vintners or whoever. But at the very, at the physical kind of rearranging a society very quickly, yes, they technically have the power to do it. Do I ever think they will? No. I think our government is far, 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 far too heavily influenced by lobby groups. Like I was just looking at a waste water abstraction bill that's coming through because Ireland was in breach of the European Water Directive, and you have to license and regulate. You should be licensing and regulating anyone that's pumping up, like, over a certain size amount of water. And the size that Ireland set was like, it was something outrageous. Like, you would need to be pumping over the amount of water that Dungarvan would use every day to license yourself. Because we have so many data centers and they use like so much water, but the government didn't want to regulate them at all. So they're like, yeah, who needs water? And it's just like they're building more and more data centers, and without clear regulation and licensing, there will be places that will not have enough water because they won't know where all the water is going. And something as simple and basic as water, our government has turned around and said, no, actually, because we want to not regulate data centers. So technically, yes, I think a government could. I don't think our government will, though. I just don't believe that they will take the necessary action.
Yeah, I'd be cynical too. I wouldn't.
Absolutely. And as well, like coming back to the COVID-19 conversation, because we've spoken about this a lot, Maya, as well on our podcast with YMCA, and we spoke about the comparisons between climate change and COVID and how it's like publicly received. And specifically here, I'm talking about like the science. And we've seen a strong majority. You'll always have the outliers, but the strong majority of people, completely, like supporting the science of this, obviously. But then when you shift over to climate change, people kind of disassociate with it. And I suppose that in that context, it's kind of the short term, long term vision that we have as kind of human beings. But my question, I suppose, is how much power and what we've seen over the last month do the government have in influencing and also communicating the importance of an issue? And we suppose we have spoken about that in some element, and you're not very optimistic, which I don't blame you, but the importance of communicating the science behind the issue, and we've seen that come out very strongly over the last few months, and people seem to kind of hang on the weight of these daily media meets up in the Department of Health, and people watch the news now probably way more than they ever did. So is there an element of that, if the government come out strong enough backing the science of something such as COVID, which is such an imminent issue, would that change a lot? Actually, like, would it change a lot of like societal behavior and make a shift that way?
I think definitely. I think the government indicates to people how urgent something is, and by the government being effective climate deniers by how they act, with this whole kind of like, oh yes, it's very urgent, we're just going to do nothing about it. It kind of lures people, I think, into the sense of, sure, it's fine. Like they surely wouldn't lead us towards our untimely end, would they? And so I definitely do think if the government treated climate breakdown with the urgency it deserves, I think people would get on board. But I also think the big difference there is nobody was making money off COVID, but there's a lot of people that make money off climate breakdown. And the kickback all over the media would be quite ferocious if the government started taking climate breakdown seriously. And I suppose that's why we are where we are with climate breakdown, because since the very beginning, since what, the 70s was it when Exxon knew, they have funded misinformation. They have, hidden the results. They have just lied about it. And there are so many people making so much money off ensuring that our economy doesn't change, and our economy has to change if we're to tackle climate breakdown. So I think if someone was making a load of money off COVID, the global response wouldn't have been quite as clear. Like, I think if Exxon was making COVID, the response wouldn't have been quite as clear.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great point, and something that I suppose as advocates we don't really sometimes think about the financial side or like the business side of things. We're thinking about like how it looks from the person suffering from the issue, and we don't really think about the extreme person who holds all the cards almost, which a lot of the time plays into money. But this has been a really insightful conversation for both me and Maya, and I think Maya just has one last question before we end it.
Oh yeah, let me see. I suppose we were kind of interested, as we're both women, in women activists, and you're an activist too, and we were saying that in recent times, we've seen that even though we want to believe there is equality in society, but time and time again, we're kind of proven wrong, I guess, especially at the moment in the most recent events. We've seen, instances still occur where women are objectified. And I was wondering kind of what do you think Ireland can do to work towards real equality for women?
That's a good question. I do often think that, so you'll see these things where there's this like, oh my God, she's a woman and she's elected, and you're like, yes, but she also like voted for horrific immigration border policies, and there's this almost, I don't know what you call it, this kind of girl boss sort of idea of women's equality, but in reality, I think that the only way that we will have true equality is if we build a future and build systems whereby power isn't divvied out hierarchically. Because if it is, there's always going to be, and it might not be women, but there's always going to be hierarchies. And it will usually be organized by some sort of signifier, be it gender or religion or race or whatever it is. So I think chasing equality through our existing systems will be a dead end. Like, I definitely think, we, like, as women, we might get more representation. But I wonder how far can a woman get in those systems without starting to act against women? How far can you get in a system if you won't uphold that system? And if you're upholding that system, then you're not really contributing to women's equality. You're just pulling up the ladder. So what I think will have to happen will be us as people, as communities, as a country, developing like really robust communities, really robust movements that aren't hierarchical, and that not just aren't hierarchical, but are designed as a way to resist that tendency for hierarchy, because we've grown up our whole life knowing a president, knowing that there are TDs, knowing that someone's a princess or whoever they are. And so I think we're naturally like even in school, I was just talking to a friend about this recently. You'll say, okay, you're the two best footballers, you pick teams. Like we're constantly organized that way, that the way we're taught, the way we are taught in college, like religion. Like we see these structures of hierarchies everywhere. So I think we naturally go to reproduce them. But I think only by resisting that will we ever have like proper equality, which is way harder actually than I can even imagine it would be.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great point to end on, that we have to start resisting. And we have to start, I think, like you're saying, fighting for real change. And currently in the systems that we have, it's not 100, like it's not substantial, is it? Like it's really just like formal. It's not substantial equality we have at all. Like it's just generalized, and it looks a certain way when it's not. And I think that for young people particularly, the power we have is in our ability as a generation, especially, to speak up and to have social media and to have so many organizations that truly want to support youth voice and truly want to support youth participation, like the NYCI, and having us here today and being able to speak to such a role model as yourself, Saoirse. So I think that's the real power we have in being able to do that. And that's a fantastic note to finish on. So thank you so much, Saoirse, and thank you, Maya. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, as you can tell. And it's
thanks
been
you for having me.
Pleasure.
Thank
you. Anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I think definitely, like that last point you were saying there, actually, that's something I'm going to go away from and like try and actively, like, I suppose, challenge when maybe I'm thinking that way. Because I think, as you said, it's ingrained, and it's something I don't think I've like actively thought about enough. So yeah, I suppose something new to take away, which is always brilliant. So thank you so much. Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you to Alicia for facilitating. And I guess we will close up this part. Yeah. I don't know what exactly, but oh yeah. I'm still getting familiar with StreamYard. Up until recently, it did not want to cooperate with me. As the rest of the committee know so well. But thankfully my flatmate lent me her laptop, so all was well tonight. But that last final session brings us to a close for this evening. I'm just like trying to reflect upon it all, because I think we covered such a huge amount of I suppose different experiences and different stories and different journeys, and definitely something that I know myself, and I imagine most of the people who came today will take some time to reflect on it, because even myself, as we're talking to Saoirse there are concepts, I suppose, around power that we might not have really considered before, and I think it's really important listening to people's stories and actively listening to them. So, we have a tendency to just let it all wash over us, and we're listening and we're nodding our heads. Alicia said it earlier. But are we like actively listening? So hearing what the person is saying, reflecting upon it, and actually, I suppose, implementing and changing the way we act, reflecting on that. So when we're listening to people's stories surrounding power, holding that in yourself as you move forward is really important. It creates empathy, and I think empathy is extremely powerful. Although hard at times, it is one of the most powerful things we can show. So yeah, thank you so much for everyone who came along today. I really hope that young activists, older activists, anybody who took part, that you have something to take away from this. I think having a discussion around power is really important, especially, you know, in the current situation we're in. Something that I think we need to be more conscious about, and actively work to raise each other up. I definitely want to emphasize that the importance of, you know, solidarity, and you know, especially as young people, you know, there is strength in numbers, and there is a whole community out there. So if you are, you know, someone who is, you know, maybe just taking that first step, and is maybe a little bit unsure, wants to, but is just feeling a little uncertain about it, you can chat away to expand your network. Any youth activist or person engaging in these things online, send them a DM. I've done it before, and it's how I know it's kind of intimidating, but most people love to have a chat. Like, I know I do. I love having the chats. So definitely reach out and build that community. And yeah, so I will close this up. I want to thank everyone who came along, and the NYCI and all the partners of One World Week for letting us do this, giving some power to young people. And yeah, thank you so much. Hopefully you've all enjoyed the event and have enjoyed One World Week. Yes, I will let you guys go. Goodbye.